Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello, nerds! How are you this week? I am really good. Today we have two guests on the podcast, Millie and Nick from Decolonizing Love. So I'll tell you about why I decided to invite them, and then I'll pass the mic to them so they can introduce themselves. So Millie and Nick educate people online about polyamory. And as you know, if you've been listening to the podcast, I left a long-term monogamous relationship about 5 months ago. And since then, I've been exploring a lot. I came out as queer, and I've been reading a lot of books about the different ways to be in relationships. Before I jump into something else, I want to make sure that I'm in alignment with my values. So I'm looking at everything that is possible. And I was reading books like Polysecure, More Than Two. And in my research, I came across their Instagram account, Decolonizing Love, and fell down the rabbit hole. They are really fascinating. So welcome, Millie and Nick. Please tell my listeners about who you are, what's your story, and yeah.
Well, thank you, Marie-Pier. We are very happy to be here as fellow nerds. So my name is Millie, and this is my partner, Nick, and we're both polyamorous. And as you said, we run a social enterprise called Decolonizing Love through social media. We educate about polyamory from a decolonizing perspective, but we also use polyamory as an inroad to talk about how colonization affects relationality in general. So my decolonization and indigenizing political philosophy began in Kenya, where I'm from. I'm of mixed Kenyan origin. My father is half Kalenjin tribe and half Italian, and my mother is of the Dorobo, Maasai, and Kikuyu tribes, and is also a fifth Asian and indigenous Mexican. My father worked with the United Nations, so I also lived in Israel and Thailand and Cambodia. And then when I was a teen, I moved to the Netherlands before coming to do my undergrad here in Toronto, Canada, which is where we both live. So the beauty of a life of a nomadic existence between indigenous cultures, the global South, and the West is that you don't take for granted that culture is a societal construct. Because my formative years were in the global South, I found the Western obsession with romantic love and how they went about romantic love and their lack of community really odd. I grew up in a pretty political household. My father was passionate about the Palestinian cause. My mother worked at strengthening community, and that is very important for Indigenous people to life. And my stepfather is an environmentalist. So invariably, I became an activist. My activism serendipitously led me to non-monogamy activism, first for only people of color in Toronto, because there was a lot of racism in the mainstream polyamory community, before I eventually co-founded Decolonizing Love with Nick for the wider world.
And hello, everyone. I'm Nick. My story isn't so. I want to say your story is like a book, like a movie.
Epic.
Like you can write epic. Yes, my story isn't so epic. I am born and raised in Montreal, Quebec. Yes, and I have Italian and Greek roots, and so my upbringing was pretty much traditional. So very monogamous, very much where we're told by family that, like, you're going to have kids, you're going to get married, you're going to follow that script. Very patriarchal as well, my family. And so growing up, I would get these influences and really gear myself up for that type of life. However, when it came to love, things were very different for me internally, like very, very different. I had very different feelings from what I was told I was supposed to have. For example, whenever I had certain relationships, I never felt this amount of possession or jealousy towards, not saying that that a requirement to be polyamorous is no jealousy, but for me, my personal story is I never felt any possession or jealousy. And I always questioned kind of like the notion of marriage and whether it's necessary. And I think that part comes more from being in Quebec. And, Quebecers in general have the lowest instances of marriage, compared to all of North America, I should say. And but that has another reason and another history for that. But I still question marriage. I questioned a lot of things, but still went with the flow. And then I met Millie 13 years ago, and she ended up telling me about polyamory, about something that she wanted to do. And at first I was like super curious. I was also happy because I was like, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't even know you can do this. I didn't even know this was an option. Like there was like this secret code in the game that unlocked another world or something. and somehow nobody told me about this. I knew about people cheating. I knew, and I guess that made me a little jaded in relationships and kind of thinking, everybody's cheating. I don't know about this whole love for life, whether we can stay with somebody for 50 years, the same person. And so, and so she kind of like, I think Millie just made me, realize that, okay, like a lot of what intuitively I was feeling, there was a world for that. And so then started kind of like going down the rabbit hole, to use your words, of learning about polyamory a little bit more. So going on Facebook groups, different types of forums, threads, to really learn about kind of like the different issues. And the same as you, learned more than two, kind of like everybody's primer to polyamory, and then other books, and then learned along the way. And this is where we are today. So that's kind of like my story. Less epic, but yes.
I keep seeing the image of like you're like a fish in a fishbowl, you're swimming in the water. You were kind of looking around, questioning the water, but felt like there was no other option. And Millie was looking at the water from the outside, came in with her outside perspective.
That makes sense.
And then she just poured the whole fishbowl over, and then I just started like gasping and jumping up and down like a fish. Being like,
or the fact that you were like, "Ooh, the wider waters, there's all this like an orca,"
Yes.
You're like, "There's all this,"
Yeah, it's breaking the fishbowl, but actually the fishbowl was in an ocean, and there's so many more possibilities.
Because I think that, because I've dated different people who are who I introduced to polyamory. And, I think Nick was one of the best transition into polyamory. And I think there's some people who will want to stay in the matrix. There's some people, even when you show them the possibility that's a wider world, they don't want to swim away from their pool. You wanted to explore the wider world. You were like, oh my God, there's more to life. Some people, even when there's given those options, don't want, to.
And I want to specify that's, in our experience, that's a large majority of people. That's not to say that everybody's going to be like that. But a large majority of people do end up, when they kind of see outside and see that that's a possibility, and they take that leap to learn, introspect, learn the skills, it becomes amazing. We've also met people that have taken that leap and learned everything, and then consciously decided to be monogamous as well. Yeah. And that is just as fine as well. Exactly. So, it's like there is, but in our personal belief, and there's no way to really prove this yet, but we do think that there is a large majority of people that are naturally polyamorous. And it's just because of this culture, this compulsory monogamy culture, that kind of confines us in this world where we think monogamy is the only option.
I love that you bring this up, because that's going to segue into my next question. Before I came across your account, I had never heard of the term compulsory monogamy culture. So I would really love for you to tell my listeners what that means. And also, I'm familiar with the idea of decolonization, but I had never heard about it when it comes to relationships. So what does that mean to you, and what's the history behind that?
Okay. So I will answer the first part of that question about decolonizing and how that relates to relationships. And then Nick will answer the question around the history of compulsory monogamy and what does compulsory monogamy mean.
Yeah.
So we talk about, and we titled it our page, Decolonizing Love, because a lot of people don't even know that love is affected by colonization. A lot of people don't even know in general much about the history of colonization. And a lot of the time we attribute colonization only to land, resources, and enslavement. But colonization affected every single part of our lives. It was a complete turnover of the old world to this new world order. So when we are decolonizing love, we're critically examining and challenges the way in which colonization, imperialism, and dominant culture narratives have shaped our understanding of love, relationships, and intimacy. So we recognize that colonialism not only imposed political and economic control, but they imposed Eurocentric values, norms, and structures onto various aspects of life, including relationships. So to decolonize love is to reclaim and honor diverse cultural and historical ways of forming connections, intimacy, and family structures that have been marginalized or suppressed by colonial forces.
I love this. And could you give us an example, like a specific example of how colonization influenced relationships?
Absolutely. So we can look at We're gonna look at Turtle Island. I think it's good because we know we're all here. You're in Quebec. We're here in Ontario. So when the British came here, women on Turtle Island had quite a lot of freedom. They had free sexual relations with men. The way that families were formed here was mostly people lived in an extended kin network, but women were not tied to the men that they had children with. And the British found this free sexual liberation of women just uncouth, barbaric, uncivilized. And they started, and also they didn't respect the fact that land was not owned. To them, land was a private was something to be commodified, whilst land was owned by the community. In indigenous cultures. So what they started to do was start to privatize land, and say only men can own land. And women, to be able to gain security, had to be married to a man. And you could not marry multiple men, and men could not marry multiple women. And the only institution that would recognize your marriage no longer be tribal culture, it would be the church. And so in this way, you are forcing people to survive, to have dignity, especially for women, their only survival is going to be now through a man, through marriage, through this Christian customs. So in this way, compulsory monogamy culture was forced onto Indigenous women in this country. An example.
I think that kind of goes a little bit into the history.
Yeah, it goes a little bit. It goes into history. So, but you can start in the agricultural revolution.
Yeah. So really, a lot of what Millie says kind of ties into how compulsory monogamy culture started. It really started with kind of like, it's deeply intertwined with the societal shifts that happened with the agricultural revolution, like Millie said, and the rise of patriarchy. So, Millie talked a little bit about how previously there was a lot of like nomadic hunter and gatherer societies, and the idea of inheritance and property rights weren't really there until really that agricultural revolution. And the reason why was because property or inheritance was passed down through your own lineage, and men needed to find a way to guarantee that their children were their own lineage. And there was no science, there was no paternity tests back in the days. So the only way to know that was to control the woman that they were sleeping with, and control to ensure that the woman doesn't sleep around with other men. And so, I want to specify, men were still allowed to sleep with other women, but it was really that control of the women, because that was the only way they could know and pass down. And so, this really marked a shift from more like communal and flexible forms of relationships to stricter monogamous unions. And now in the context of religion, though, and how that plays into, there was a shift from, fertility gods or fertility religions and gods and goddesses in many different parts of the world. And there was a shift from these type of gods and goddesses to patriarchal structures. That's where you hear about Zeus, right, being the head of all the gods. And then after, all these polytheist religion moved to a monotheist, where it was one god who's a man as well. These, it's with this shift in these beliefs, then these societies became more hierarchical, more patriarchal, and it shifted to a more male-dominated narrative, which mirrored the rise of patriarchal family structures as well. And so the rise of Christianity, and particularly in the Roman Empire and later its dominance of Europe, played a significant role in further enforcing monogamy. So obviously Christianity emphasized sexual purity, marriage, and the monogamous family unit that aligned with the interests of the Roman Empire. And this sought to control social order and inheritance. And so as Christianity gained more and more power, so it consolidated its influence by promoting monogamy as the only legitimate form of relationship. And this is really the essence of compulsory monogamy culture. It's that only legitimate form that's acceptable. So it condemned all other types of alternative practices as immoral, diabolical, heretical, and the church's control over marriage and its role in shaping societal norms solidified the link between Christianity, patriarchy, and compulsory monogamy. Now, it's also important to also note that its compulsory monogamy served the interests of colonial powers by furthering their control over indigenous population and reinforcing their ideologies, as kind of Millie mentioned a little bit. It also plays a crucial role in the emergence of capitalism. So monogamous family units served as units of labor and consumption, aligning with the needs of capitalistic production and consumption patterns. And so the nuclear family became a source of labor, with men working outside the home, women taking care of domestic responsibilities, creating a stable workforce for industrialization. And so that served its purpose for industrialization. And this arrangement also facilitated the accumulation of private property, inheritance, and the passing down of wealth, all of which are central to capitalistic economic systems. And so everything, in essence, the history of compulsory monogamy is a complex interplay of agricultural shifts, patriarchal control, religious transformation, colonial expansion, and economic interests. It reflects how cultural, religious, and economic forces converged to shape our understanding of love, relationships, and family structure in ways that often reinforced power imbalances and marginalize alternatives to how we relate.
Mm. But all this is super subtle because we don't want this to look like a tool for power. So at some point we have to sprinkle some romanticism on top of that.
Well, yeah, and you raise a good point. I mean, I think the romanticism movement also finds a way to solidify or almost like give credibility and validate this a little bit more.
So when we look at the history of romantic culture and then look at love marriages, it's interesting how over the last couple hundred years, it's really been feminism and that's pushed romanticism, but then patriarchy has this way of always co-opting all of this, the romantic movement of feminism, because back when is that it was considered that women didn't need to have orgasms, when they were in a when they were married, is that, the way that a man had sex with his wife was very different from the way he had sex in a brothel, and so a good woman, a married woman, was a woman who, was there to just take care of her husband, be with the kid. She didn't have any desires. She didn't have any orgasms. She was very chaste. That was what it was. And then women were like, no, we also have needs. We should be romanced. We should also have orgasms and everything, But it was this interesting way that when we look at dating culture, also coincides with the rise of marketing. When you look at romantic love, it coincides with the thing of the idea of having this big shiny ring, so that you can, this will prove your marriage. So this way that the system would be like, oh, women, yeah, you definitely should be romanced with a diamond ring.
There's money there. Let's take advantage.
You're having continue, So it's always been very nefarious where that patriarchy, romantic love is literally only a couple hundred years as an idea, as a basis of marriage, because beforehand people would get married to strengthen social ties or family ties.
Political reasons.
Like I always find it hilarious that in today's age that we think Romeo and Juliet is a book that shows you like perfect romantic love, but back in the day it was to show you why romantic love is a bad idea. And that's not a basis to, be in love, because look, you just killed some members of your whole family and now you're dead at 13, 14 years old after 3 days of knowing each other, right?
Yes.
Right? But that was what Shakespeare wrote those books for. But now there's this amnesia.
It was called a tragedy.
It was called a tragedy for a reason, But it's
warning.
Exactly. Yes. But we now live in this age of like so much amnesia. We don't know that what the history of compulsory monogamy culture is. We don't know the history of romantic love. We just have it as a given. This culture teaches us is that everybody should aspire to romantic love. And if you are not aspiring to be in a monogamous relationship, there's something wrong with you. You're deviant in some sort of way. And it's not even the way that we have been for most of our human history. And what we do is try to teach people a little bit about, try to wake people up, to what this myth has been that we've been taught for over the last 300 years.
Yeah, there's a teenage part of me that doesn't want to wake up. That's like want to go, no. I can't hear like all the rom-coms I have watched and like all the feelings it made me feel. It's like, no, this was not real. It's fascinating and blowing my mind. And now I'd love to shift from history to more personally about you. What brought each one of you to polyamory, and why do you keep choosing polyamory every day?
I've never ever chosen monogamy. I started.
One thing about Millie is she's always been polyamorous.
Yes, I've never been monogamous. So the way I started was when I was a child. I lived for a while in Maasai territory on the outskirts of Nairobi, Kenya. And the Maasai are one of the few tribes in my country who still keep to the traditions. They have barely assimilated. And so polygamy, a lot of them are polygamous. And whenever I say this, people are like, oh, the men are the only ones who are allowed to marry multiple women. And so the women are all, I guess, controlled by men. It's very patriarchal. I'm like, no, not at all. Is that women are, yes, only men are allowed to marry multiple women, but women are allowed to have multiple lovers, and they do. And when a man goes hunting, comes back and sees a spear in front of his wife's hut, that means she's with her boyfriend. Don't disturb. And she can have babies with another man. It won't take her boyfriend's name. It will just take her husband's last name, but she's allowed to do that. And twice a year, all the women in the village go on a girls gone out wild trip, and other men in other villages are scared because they know what time it is. All the wild Maasai girls are out. And so I lived in this, this tribal community for a while, but I went to school inside the city. And a lot of my family are assimilated into more Western ideas of relationships, like monogamy and marriages, and they're Christian. And I just was to see the hypocrisy of people who had assimilated into Western ideas of relationships, and I would compare it to the stability of those who had kept the traditional indigenous ways. And I would see a lot of cheating inside Western, those who had assimilated to Western ideas of relationships. There was a lot of divorces. In Kenya, we also have a lot of orphan children. And the thing about traditional culture and the way families worked is that there were no real orphans, is that if someone's mom died or dad died, there was usually multiple wives. There was usually extended, kin network. So there were never orphans. So our traditional way had all this natural safety net that Western culture and relationships did not have. But I like the honesty of my traditional ways. And I went to a wedding of one of my uncles, and he was getting married for, I think, the third time. He got a third divorce, second 2 divorces, and was getting married for a third time. And I was just in there watching him, give his vows, saying he'll be with this woman forever. And I was like, liar! You said that 2 times before.
Millie, don't you know that the third time is the right time?
I just looked around me, and I was looking at all the adults being like, how is everybody not saying anything? And this guy cheats, and we all know that, and I was like, I do not want to be part of this way of being. I think I want to prefer being the way the Maasais are, where people are honest about desire and who they want to be with. And I'd rather live an honest life than this performance that Westerners have of relationships, that's just people being deceitful and divorces and broken marriages and sexless times. I don't want any of this, so I chose my indigenous culture because of that.
Honesty being one of your biggest why.
Yeah.
The number one. Yeah.
I Nick knows this about me. Anyone who dates me knows, for me, it's like honesty is such an important, integral part for me about having a relationships. And I think a lot of the way that people do relationships in the West is very performant. There's a lot of performativity, compulsory monogamy culture is a script. This is how you should do things, You're not people really introspecting what they want, who they are. And I'm a mix of different tribes. And one of my tribes, the Kikuyu tribe, is a very matriarchal tribe. And what I love about it is that you can also marry yourself in the Kikuyu tribe. You can have sister wives, and there's so many options in it, because what they want to know is, who are you? And then tell us who we are, and we'll celebrate that. And I thought, and that's such a much beautiful way than this one size fits all model that Western culture gives you. I prefer the model of us journeying in who we are, and us celebrating that, and so.
Mm-hmm.
For me, so going back to the question, why do I choose polyamory every day? And I look back at the different experiences I've had, and I feel that what polyamory has given me are incredible amount of skills. Not only organizational skills, because you do need organizational skills.
Time management pro.
Yes. But I think it's what it develops is very great communication skills, because one of the tenets of polyamory is learning how to communicate in a way where sometimes that is trauma informed, because you will bring up a lot of trauma in yourself and in your partners. Also developing the skills, it's really learning a lot about consent, and the importance of consent, the importance of expressing your needs, expressing your boundaries, expressing, it's going further into expressing your needs. It's like, what are your personal requirements for security, and really digging deep to get to know yourself at a level, and then learning to express those things. Learning how to relate to different personalities. It's like, we can obviously do that if we're a serial monogamous, whether we, like date one person, break up, date another person, break up. That's just serial monogamy. We can definitely learn that. I feel that when you're dating multiple people at the same time, I think you learn exponentially. It's kind of like learning on steroids, how to really communicate and relate to different personalities, and kind of learning to adapt yourself. And I think these are skills that, you can apply to work, to friendships, to anything. And so, and lastly, I just want to say that, it's like, with all that, it's like your level of growth, or your speed of growth, personal growth, really it goes into hyperspeed, because I've definitely learned so much about myself and about others, that I feel like I grew a lot, and I continue to. With every relationship I have, there's always things that I'm learning, and when I say I learn a lot about myself, one of the things that having different relationships, what you get to realize is, we all have personalities, but different people activate different facets of our personality. So when I have a relationship with Millie, for example, she's going to activate a certain part of my personality, but there's other parts of my personality that remain dormant, and Millie doesn't activate, just because the dynamics of our two personalities, our two relationships, our relationship, and how we relate. And another person is going to activate other elements of my personality as well. And you get to learn different aspects about yourself. And also, Millie's going to trigger me in certain ways. It's going to activate not only personalities, but certain traumas. And another individual is going to activate other traumas that I didn't even know I had, but it's like, it's really the amount of learning is incredible. And so this is what allows me to continue to be polyamorous every day. On top of everything Millie said about the honesty aspect, freedom. I think this is something that we haven't really mentioned or highlighted, but I think this is one of the major tenets of a lot of individuals that are polyamorous, like the freedom to explore, not being confined, and being free to explore different crushes, different loves, different and seeing them through, and not feeling like, oh, I'm already taken, I can't. Really.
Yes, that was a big thing for me. So yes, honesty, learning, and growth. But when I was in a relationship, I remember meeting someone else and feeling super connected to that other person, and wanting to explore that connection, to be able to go deep in that connection, but telling myself, oh, well, I'm not allowed to. And that rule didn't really make sense to me. It was like, well, why? Why though? Because I could explore that connection, experience that person fully, and still that wouldn't change anything to how I feel about my partner. And that's where the mind fuck, excuse my French, happened, where that realizing that's actually one of my values, depth and connection and experience and freedom.
Yeah.
And maybe there is a way, a model that allows me to live more in accordance to my values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
that's probably a myth, and like I think that if we follow love from somebody else, it's going to diminish or hurt our current relationship. I think that's. Did you want to say, Millie?
No. On a similar note, that our hearts can only love one person. That our hearts are actually pretty big, and we can love so much more. And I was just thinking also, about that. It's one of the reasons why I also prefer polyamory to compulsory monogamy culture is I don't want to be the jailer of somebody else. I don't want to be a prison guard. I don't want to have to,
Police.
Police. But I think there's also, I was talking to a romantic interest of mine about the physiology of jealousy. So one of my romantic interests, he was recently in a relationship where the person was trying to force him to be monogamous. And he was saying about how physically he felt completely off, because for the first time he was like feeling like, trying to be monogamous. He also started to realize his body shift to starting to look at her in a way that was different, that he never felt before, where he was like, why is she talking to that guy? He's trying to feel physically like jealous. And I don't want to invite those sort of negative feelings where I've got to feel controlling and protective over my relationship in that sort of way. I want my partner to be free, and for just him to want to do the right thing, for me. And I look sometimes at monogamous people who are partaking in compulsory monogamy, and they're constantly playing police guard. They're constantly on the lookout for threats to their relationship. And I think that's not a way to live a life. I just think that's a terrible way to constantly be on guard. Who are you talking to? Who's on your phone? Why do you like that girl on Instagram? Why did that girl talking to you like that? Like, that's just a way to live like that constantly. I don't know why people want that. And, I just think it's such a toxic characteristic that's been normalized in society.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a video that I think RuPaul filmed and saying, oh, I love my partner so much that I would never want to limit them.
Yes.
Coming from a place of love.
Yes.
Versus we've been taught that that's not love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a similar expression that's been said throughout the years, that if you love something, set them free.
Mm-hmm.
If they love you back, they will come back. And the fact that I think the purest form of love is giving somebody the freedom to choose, and they're free, and if they come back and choose you every day, not just you, but if they choose to spend their time with you and continuously spend their time with you, they love you, and you've allowed them that freedom to do that. You're not forcing them. So
that's beautiful. Nick, you've mentioned one myth, and I want to explore more of them. One that comes to mind, one thing that I've heard personally is along the lines of, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have everything. That's just wanting to have everything. What are your thoughts on that? And what are the most, popular myths that you're faced with?
Why not?
Yeah. What if I like cake? What if I like cake?
I have it?
I want to have it all. Who's the one that determined that I cannot have it and eat it?
Exactly. And this comes back to how colonial capitalism and Christian Puritan ethics views what you're allowed to have and pleasure and love. It all comes back to this idea of scarcity, that there's only this much and only you can have this much. Otherwise, you are greedy and selfish. And he doesn't like pleasure. Puritan Christian culture does not like pleasure. right? And thing is, we are actually able to love multiple people responsibly, and our hearts are big enough and capable enough. And we all have multiple friends. We're capable of doing it. You know, you're capable of balancing all those different things. And a lot of people we hear, say things like, you're a commitment phobe, but I'm always like, no, polyamory is actually the love of commitment, if anything. And it's like people will never say, oh, you have 3 jobs, how can you commit to them all, right? So why not the same thing with a relationship? You are capable of committing to multiple people. So these are some of the myths that we often hear and things said against polyamorous people, and that monogamy is better for family, or polyamory is open cheating, which has always been my favorite one.
Polyamory is only sex-based.
We're sex, obsessed deviants who are only into orgies. And we must have a problem in our relationship. That's why it's an open relationship. And all of these things really say more about the person that's saying it than about their actual understanding of polyamorous people. Because if you knew polyamorous people, for one, is that they're people who introspect relationships pretty strongly, that they're always unpacking and learning. Because the thing about polyamory is that it requires a degree of emotional skill sets that's very different than that required for monogamy. Is that in polyamory, that you have to be very conscientious and introspective of boundaries for things to go, for relationships to be able to go well. Is that you have to have great communication skills. You're constantly balancing your commitment and responsibilities to various partners. And that sort of like intentional thinking is not as much inside compulsory monogamy culture. Compulsory monogamy is a script. And so I'm going to go over every single myth.
Let's go through the myths, and really we can do kind of like a rapid fire.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do that.
So, okay. So, I think Millie's named a few. So, it's polyamory is only sex-based. Well, so the term polyamory, it's a little bit of a misnomer, because, poly is Greek and amory is Latin. So it's using kind of Greek and Latin roots. It's like the proper term, it would have been probably polyphilia or polyphilia, and then multiamory. That would have been kind of like, if we wanted. But anyways, the point there is the amory part. It means love. It doesn't mean sex. It's not polysex, it's polylove. So it's having multiple, and that is a requirement, the ability and the capacity to love more than one person. And so we really truly think that if you are in a monogamous relationship or an open relationship where you have one partner and you're just opening up your relationship just to have sex with others, but you're not in love, you are not polyamorous. That is not part of the tenets of polyamory. This is really, you're just a monogamous couple that decided to open up your relationship for just sex. So that's one thing. Another myth is, monogamy is better for families. There have been very early research showing that kids that grow up in polyamorous households or intentional, communal families actually do fare a lot better. That's because they have more adults to actually where they can go for advice. They have more adults that take care of them, that give them attention. How many times do we hear in this day and age where you have 2 working parents in the nuclear family and they're so busy, they're always on their phone or they're always working, the kids don't get any attention, so they're always on their phones or their technology or playing video games and stuff like that, and they don't get what's needed to be a kid and grow up. They need the attention of adults to really guide them. And so with more parental figures, you do end up having a lot more emotionally stable children. So yes, so it's still early research on that, but that's one of the things. Polyamory is, yes.
I just want to add a little anecdote here. I was talking with a woman who lived in a 4-people household, and she said, like, oh, usually 2 of us put the kids to bed and the other 2 clean the kitchen and pack the lunches for the next day. So when the kids are in bed, everything is done and we can all just relax. It's just more hands on deck.
Right. And that just goes to show that, you know, this idea of the nuclear family is not sustainable. It's not sustainable in this day and age. And so, so then, you know, polyamory is open cheating. So open, you know, we've gotten this a lot. So really understanding the term cheating. It doesn't mean cheating cannot exist in polyamory, but the term cheating really means, you know, it's just like cheating on an exam, or you know, it's really you are breaking a boundary, or you're lying about something, you're being dishonest about something. But when we talk about how polyamory is about honesty, it's, you know, it's like it's open honesty. Like cheating is kind of like a little bit of the opposite. It's about being dishonest. So so this is where that's a myth. Are there any other myths that we haven't kind of talked about a little bit?
I think we went through, most of them.
Yeah, those are the big ones we receive.
Yeah.
There are a few others, but I think those are the big ones.
One of the big word also that comes up a lot when I talk about polyamory is, oh, I could never do this. I'd be too jealous. I think jealousy, how would you approach that?
That whether you're in a monogamous or in a polyamorous, you should always be addressing jealousy. Is that there's no such thing as, oh, I'm too jealous. I think sometimes the problem is that people have been infantilized emotionally and been told that that's something that they should never be addressing or working on upon themselves. Is that that's something, if you are feeling jealous, you need to go to the root cause. Like jealousy is just a teacher. And you should use it to guide you to the root cause as to why you're feeling this way. And it should never be an excuse to control another human being. You're never entitled to control another human being. Is that if you're feeling jealous, you need to address it. You need to, do you have a childhood wound? Do you have a trauma? You know, what are you fearing? Where is it showing in your body? What is it saying about what your relationship needs? But whatever it needs should never be control of another person. And a lot of people say that I'm just a jealous person. And that to me, just saying like I'm an angry person, is that, you know, that would never be an excuse. You need to work on your anger issues if you're an angry person. You need to work on it. That's what that says. It's not an identity.
And jealousy is not a free pass.
Yes. Jealousy is not a free pass. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to say something on that?
No, I just wanted to add that it's like it's like any negative emotion. Like jealousy is an emotion, just like anger, just like sadness. And, you know, it's when we are experiencing these different emotions, like Millie said, like, let's not attribute it to our identity. We don't say I'm a sad person, I'm an angry person, I'm a depressive person. We want to really, you know, emotions are there to guide us. They're there. They're signals that our body tells us that there's something either wrong or something good. Because when we're happy, I mean, that's a happy emotion. But so it's an invitation to really look within ourselves into where this is coming from, where this is, and when Millie says that it should not be used to control another person, this is something that, again, compulsory monogamy culture has taught us that when we feel jealous, that's the end of the sentence. It's full stop. And that everybody should accommodate us because we're feeling jealous. Imagine being able to say, I'm angry, and because I'm angry, you have to pamper me and treat me good so that I don't feel angry anymore, you know, or it just doesn't make sense. And so it's really, yes, it's about managing the jealousy.
So, other than doing your inner work and strengthening your inner safety, how do you both create security, help the other person feel secure in the relationship? Do you have examples of how you can do that?
Do you want to say how we do it to each other?
All the
wait,
way.
no, wait. You say what I do, and I'll say what you do.
Oh,
I love this.
Yeah.
Little game.
Okay. Oh, wow. Nick does so many things. I think one of the reasons why we've been together 13 years and why we clicked from the get-go is the fact that is our honest communication, our communication skills, which you had from the get-go, and the ways that you create security. We tackle our issues as they come. We don't ever like wait on them. You know, Nick is very much about, all right, we got to discuss it. And he started this more than me, you know, is that there's something, you know, we talk about it. We go into the root cause of to where it is emotionally, what's really going on. And we don't sleep until it is discussed, or we make a date about when this will absolutely be discussed and unpacked. And
there's an action plan.
And there's an action plan about how to resolve it. Mm-hmm. And that sort of ensures that we deal, you know, with things as they come. So that's one of the ways that we work through things. Another thing that I think has been something we co-joined did is that we have a 5-page agreement on our relationship, and we've gone through all sorts of things about that we need to reflect upon. And so it's been stuff like our boundaries in, for example, our safe sex policy is very much like written down. You know, time that we spent together during what's that going to look like during having vacations during the year. How do we want to spend this? Even deep into things as funeral plans, end of life, you know, ideas, which a lot of people avoid, but you really need to like talk about them.
Also, breakup plans, not just
we have breakup plans. You know,
so, yeah, it's what happens if we break up.
We break up. You know, having an ethics around that right now and talking about that. So those are sort of the things that we do to create, you know, security. And
I want to add things that Millie does. So Millie is very good with words of affirmation.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
very, very good with words of affirmation. And so like she always makes it a point to say things that she likes about me, admires about me, and so that adds to the security. There's also the physical touch as well, where, you know, it's like we always make sure to hug each other every day, kiss. Every time I leave for work, I always kiss Mary. And so, you know, it's stuff that we do. We also you know, have found ways to really check in with each other.
Yeah.
You know, and they become a little bit more frequent when there's new partners that are involved. So it's just to make sure that we're feeling good about it. And it's not necessarily about permission or anything, but more about just, you know, it's like making sure that that we're good together.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, it's one of the things that we really feel. It's, you know, and it's one of the struggles in polyamory. It's where when there's a new relationship, there's this thing called new relationship energy. And some people call it the honeymoon phase and everything. And sometimes when you have an older relationship, and if it's very old, there's that old relationship energy. And so sometimes the new relationship energy takes over and you end up neglecting your other relationships. And it's something to be very aware of, that you're checking in with your other relationships, making sure everybody's okay, emotionally and secure, even if you're filled with dopamine in this, you know, it's with this new partner. And so I think it's something that we do a lot of as well.
Yeah. And to add on to that is that, so Nick lives between me and his other partner. And so we have a check-in and check-out every single time. So when he's going to be going to the other partner, for let's say a week, we have a check-out moment. How was everything during the last week? Anything we should anything we should work on? How are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And then we have a check-in, where we catch up, together. We'll have like a wine and cheese, or we'll go to a bar
or tea.
We'll talk, and then we'll just have a moment to reconnect. I haven't seen you in a week. How's things? What did you do? So we have those moments to like reconnect as a relationship. And I think that's one of the things I actually think is very beautiful about polyamory, is that you never really get sick of, seeing your partner every day. You don't go into like a routine or everything, It really is truly that distance makes the heart grow fonder. Like, I'm always excited when it's the day when Nick is going to be coming home. And it's been 13 years. And my friends know this about me, is that when it's the day Nick is coming home, they'll just see me all giddy and be like, is Nick coming home? She's like, yes, Nick is coming home today. My baby's coming home today. I'm gonna make him this and this and this, and it's like little two dogs like just meeting each other, just jumping up and just really excited to see each other. So it's like, that's some of the things that we do in our relationship.
It's a lot harder to take the other person for granted, is what I hear.
Yes,
absolutely. You can't take them for granted. And I don't think in polyamory, I think you also really learn, because due to it from dating other people, what you have at home. If you go and see what the dating market's out there, you'd be like, what? I don't have to deal with it. I'm so happy that you exist, And but also, even when I've had some great partners, but it's weird. Like, it's like a light. Is that this light doesn't diminish this light. All it does is like magnify the entire light inside my life.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I'm in love with somebody else, it actually magnifies my love for Nick even more, and it's beautiful.
It's symbiotic. They both feed on each other. Yes, absolutely. I would say, like, when I'm more in love with my other partner, I'm more in love with Millie. When I'm more in love with Millie, I'm more in love with my other partner. It's symbiotic for sure.
Doesn't take over, because we could think that new relationship energy, oh my God, my feelings are so much bigger for this new person, therefore it means that I love them more. But that's also, we have to be aware of all the chemicals and all of that.
Yeah, I think it's a maturity thing. Maybe when people are new to non-monogamy and transitioning, is a new relationship is something that they can believe, oh, maybe I'm really in love with this new person. But if you've, gone through the motions of new relationship energy often while being polyamorous, you kind of understand it in a different context of what's going on in your brain and everything. And you learn how to pull that energy into your relationship, swing for other things. And that's what I've learned to do over my life,
Yes.
Like, I've never believed in monogamous myth. So my brain would never be like, oh, this person must be the one. That's never happened.
And one thing that you shared that is really big for me is, earlier you were talking about how compulsory monogamy gives you a script to follow. You just follow what the instruction manual tells you, so it's going to be easy. Versus you made your own unique agreement that honors both of your desires and needs. So it's trashing the script, putting the script in the trash, and creating your own way of being together.
And a lot of people don't know there's a script. They follow the script, but are not conscious that there is a script. Hence, Millie saying to get out of the matrix in a way, using that analogy. And I see it more like, what's in the script, it comes as a package. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you got the, it's, what do you call it? The menu du jour, or the...
today's special.
But it, you get the appetizer, the entree, and the dessert, like all for one price, right? And so what polyamory ends up doing, it deconstructs, and you can take things à la carte, you know, and what you want in your relationship and how you want it, and things don't come as a package. You don't need to, you know, see a person every day, have sex with them all the time, marry them, have a baby, you know, live with them, and they don't all come in the same package with polyamory. You can deconstruct those things and choose, depending on the person, what you want with them, and you can customize it how you want.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why in today's age especially, you're going to see polyamory rise, because more and more so people want things customized to who they are. You know, we live in this time, you know, where we're able to do things that are customized to our life in so many different ways. You don't have to go to work. You can work from home. You don't have to live here. You can have this gender. You can have this different sexual orientation. Is that you can be so many things. So why not also apply that to the relationship aspect of who we are right now? Is that this, you know, we have a 56% divorce rate. You know, you have a 50 to 70%.
This is in North America,
yeah,
by the way.
In North America.
Yeah, I just want to specify.
And you have a 50-70% infidelity rate. And then you also have, I believe, something like 60% of long-term marriages are nearly sexless, right?
Yeah.
Is that this is not sustainable. And something is going to give. And the fact that compulsory monogamy is only a couple hundred years old, it is a construct. That's holding, and it hasn't held for very long. Is that we are mammals, we are animals, and we are probably going to default to our natural nature. And non-monogamy is closer to our natural inclination than monogamy is.
The box is shaking. The box is cracking.
The box is shaking, you know, and I think it's, you know, I think it does neatly coincide with the collapse of the environment in some ways. You know, is that we're going back to our natural state of being because is that this artificial way of life is not sustainable.
It coincides also with a post-capitalistic world as well. So
late capitalism.
Late
I don't like post yet. It'd be nice to be at post, you know. But, yeah.
Yeah, this is fascinating. And I want to leave my listeners with some actionable things that they can apply if they're in a monogamous relationship right now. What can they learn from polyamory without saying, okay, I'm jumping into polyamory tomorrow? What can they learn from this way of being in a relationship?
Yeah, so I want to first start out with 2 points. So one is, you know, I'm glad you made that specification. Like, you don't have to be polyamorous. And we're not saying that everybody has to be polyamorous to live their best life and everything. There are certain people, and we call them conscious monogamists, that, you know, understand the other side, really know all the benefits, and despite all that, they consciously choose to be monogamous because they feel they can only love one person. That's their capacity, and that is okay, and that is valid. And I want to say that and you know, and highlight that. Nevertheless, we do have on our social media accounts a lot of monogamous people that follow us, and they follow us not because they want to be polyamorous, because there's a lot that they learn from our account, and they apply it to their own relationships. And so I'll just name a few that we've heard over the years. One is, because a lot of polyamorous, relationships require a high level of communication, they learn how to communicate with different things, how to communicate their feelings, how to fight, how to, communicate their boundaries, their expectations, and you can have all these things in a monogamous relationship as well. And so learning how to communicate, have open and honest communication with a partner is something that that a lot of monogamous people, in our experience, have learned from our account. The explicit negotiation of boundaries, so talking about boundaries, really, we're constantly, I wouldn't say as much now, but if you're gonna kind of be at the beginning, if you're going to be in a relationship with somebody and you're near the beginning of your relationship and you're exploring polyamory with them, you're going to be negotiating boundaries a lot and agreements. You're going to be learning what you want. For example, when there's a new partner and you're going to be sleeping over, or you're going to be sleeping with that person, do you want to be notified before or after? These are boundaries. It's what safe sex boundaries do you want to have? How often do you want to see your partner? So these things that you're going to be constantly negotiating. Now, these are in the context of polyamory, but there are certainly boundaries that you can negotiate with a partner in a monogamous setting as well. So these are, that's other things. We talked today about jealousy, managing jealousy, and nobody's immune to jealousy. There are polyamorous individuals that are jealous. There are monogamous individuals that are jealous. And so understanding and learning how to manage your jealousy and learning how to root cause, know where it comes from, is really something that a lot of monogamous people turn to polyamorous people to really learn about how to do that and how to have those discussions with their partner. We have a few videos on codependence. This is something that monogamous individuals experience a lot in relationships. There's a lot of codependent people, and we tend to lose ourselves in relationships sometimes when we're monogamous. And so what polyamorous individuals really teach is kind of like that exploration of your own individual self. And really, coming back to you and not losing yourself, being able to, if you're in a monogamous relationship, being able to go out by yourself, do these hobbies by yourself or with friends without your partner, going to parties by yourself, not having to always have your plus one be your partner. And that's gaining that freedom, that independence that you can still do in a monogamous relationship. And I would say lastly, it's really that whole emotional intelligence piece. So polyamorous individuals often develop a high level of emotional intelligence because they have to. You will not survive.
They adapt. The animal adapts.
You will not survive if you need to be able to manage your own emotions, being able to communicate and relate, and deal with conflict resolution with other partners. The worst is when I'm in conflict with all my partners at once. I feel like those are the moments where I've told all my partners, those are the moments where I just want to go to this cabin and escape and just be there for like a whole week.
And it's the worst when they're both in the same room and angry at you.
Oh yeah, when they're both in the same room. So learning how to navigate those complex interactions and situations, learning to develop empathy, awareness, conflict resolution skills, like I mentioned. Like, I think this is something that, monogamous individuals can learn as well from polyamory. So I think those are the 5 things I would say.
Wow. This is amazing. Thank you so much for coming here, blowing our minds. So many more questions come to mind, but maybe there'll have to be a part 2. Can you tell my listeners where they can find you, where they can learn more about you and about polyamory?
We are on all social media. We are on TikTok. You can find Decolonizing Love as well on Instagram. We are on YouTube, and we are on Facebook.
And Threads.
Yes.
The new place to be.
We're not on X, and we're not going to be.
And all of these links are going to be in the show notes. So thank you so much, Millie and Nick, for being here.
No, thank you for having us. This was amazing. And also wishing you also luck on your polyamory journey.
Thank you. I will let you know how it goes. And to everyone listening, have a beautiful week. And please reach out to us if you have insights that you want to share. I would love to hear your thoughts. Bye. If you love what you're hearing on the Self-Growth Nerds podcast and you want individual help finding a new direction for your life and developing the courage to make your dreams a reality, you have to check out how we can work together on selfgrowthnerds.com or message me on Instagram at selfgrowthnerds. My clients say they would have needed that support years ago. So if you're tired of feeling like you're wasting your life, don't wait. Get in touch now, and I cannot wait to meet you. Hey!